So on to chapter 13, and we have Dr. Seward's diary, and we have some interesting language choices to talk about. So the ghastly formalities, so this is in the wake of Lucy's death, and it's Dr. Seward's perspective, so the horror of it. There's a bit of antithesis here, the afflicted or blessed, talking about the nature of undertakers, where they're often of a particular frame and mind and bearing to be able to do the job that they do. So they have to keep calm and collected around those who are grieving. Then this bit's a bit weird though, because it's about the mortician's comments. So she makes a very beautiful corpse, so it's quite a privilege to attend on her. It's not too much to say that she would do credit to our establishment. Undertakers and people of that industry do have a unique perspective on death, don't they? So that's what's happening there, but it's again emphasising Lucy's beauty, like even in death, but then it's also foreshadowing that she's going to come back to unlife as a vampire. And we've got a little bit more about Van Helsing. You forget that I am a lawyer as well as a doctor. So again, he's very much like a Renaissance man, as in not the Renaissance, but the phrase Renaissance man as a man of multiple talents and interests. And you think about all the different things that Van Helsing can do. There's reference to that note that Lucy had written and torn up, which we'll come back to in a second as well, which he's looking for and found. And we have, similar to what I said earlier on about Lucy's corpse being beautiful, I could not believe my eyes that I was looking at a corpse. So really more foreshadowing of Lucy as a vampire. Then Van Helsing also places this little gold crucifix and placed it over the mouth. So that's more kind of anti-vampire defence is set up there. And also we get this idea of he wants Seward to bring a set of post-mortem knives. Must we make an autopsy? I asked. Yes and no. I want to operate, but not as you think. Let me tell you now, but not a word to another. I want to cut off her head and take out her heart. Ah, you a surgeon and so shocked. So Van Helsing, in his very prosaic, very blunt way, saying exactly what he wants to do. But again, Stoker preserving suspense because he doesn't say exactly why he wants to do that. So it's not surprising that Dr. Seward is shocked because it doesn't really make any sense, but it's no context. I suppose you could argue it's part of Van Helsing's character to withhold information because he doesn't want to alarm people, but really it's for storytelling purposes, isn't it? Because it's dramatic irony because you've got the other characters don't know what's going on. Van Helsing has worked out what's happened. The reader knows what's happened, knows she's becoming a vampire. With her beautiful dying eyes, her voice too so weak, and she kissed my rough old hand and blessed me. So that's Van Helsing saying everything that he does, even though it looks strange, he's doing it for the good, and it's what Lucy would have wanted, even though it will be strange. This bit is ironic because there's a servant who goes to sit with Lucy's body and apparently pay her respects. But here was a poor girl putting aside the terrors which she naturally had of death to go watch alone by the bier of the mistress who she loved, so that the poor clay might not be lonely till laid to eternal rest. But ironically, she's a little thief, because what happens is, here he held up a little golden crucifix. This was stolen in the night. Because I got it back from the worthless wretch who stole it, from the woman who robbed the dead and the living. So it must have been her, must have been this servant. I suppose there's some issues here about class. only a servant would think about stealing from a corpse. Maybe there's a little bit about the law. The lawyer, the solicitor, I should say, aka lawman. Yeah, don't say that. Then we've got some little administrative stuff where all of Lucy's estate ends up with Arthur Homewood. And the solicitor seems quite pleased about this. He was a good fellow, but he's rejoicing at the one little part in which he was officially interested of so great a tragedy was an object lesson in the limitations of sympathetic understanding. And decoding that, that's about where the solicitor can't really hide how happy he is for his client that Arthur has inherited everything. Obviously, because as a solicitor, he's going to profit from that as well. And that the sympathy of someone dying only extends so far. Then we have over the page. And Jack, is she really dead? Well, that's definitely dramatic irony there, isn't it? That's you just flip back and see Jack, is she really dead? Saying that. And then over the page, main thing I spotted here was there's a bit of dramatic irony here with Van Helsing's reaction to what Arthur said about not believing Lucy was dead on the previous page. I am not surprised. Just now I doubted for a moment myself. So there's some more foreshadowing there and dramatic irony of vampirization, if that's the proper word. That's probably not the proper word. Then we have remember the plot point where Arthur has inherited everything of Lucy is convenient because this allows Stoker to have Van Helsing to investigate all of Lucy's letters and papers and writings, because obviously he's looking for clues and information and things that will help him. There is also some more grim foreshadowing as well, because we have, and you are right, there will be pain for us all, but it will not be all pain, nor will this pain be the last. We and you too, you most of all, my dear boy, will have to pass through the bitter water before we reach the sweet. So that's Van Helsing there, a bit of antithesis there, so bitter and sweet as well, and again foreshadowing the horrors that await what will later be known as the Crew of Light. And there's another reference here to the wild garlic flowers as well, which is again attempts to keep Lucy from getting up and being a vampire. And of course actually this connects back to the sleepwalking as well, because when we're thinking about liminal spaces, Lucy is a sleepwalker, and that's a state between being asleep and being awake. And now there's this idea that she's going to get up and walk around potentially being dead. So actually the sleepwalking really foreshadows her nature as a vampire, because at the moment she's asleep. Well, so she's not asleep, she's dead. I'm speaking euphemistically, but she can get up and walk around when she's a vampire. Then we have a bit of a deviation because we go back to Mina Harker's journal, and we've got all of their married life together, and Jonathan has he's become high up in the law firm because Mr. Hawkins has died. And I can't help but think, based on what's covered here, I can't help but think that maybe Stoker is having it so we can infer that Mr. Hawkins may have been killed by Dracula, because Mr. Hawkins had died suddenly. Mr. Hawkins, they talk about his funeral here, actually. This isn't the bit when they say that he's died. But it seems a bit of a coincidence, doesn't it, really? Maybe because of his connections to the property purchases and Dracula's trying to cover his tracks. I wonder if it is connected to that. I don't know. That's just speculation. I've double-checked the texts because I just paused it just to have a look just to see. And it doesn't specify, but I wonder if you might see something or you might have some ideas yourself. But it could be possible that Dracula bumped off Hawkins. That seems to be quite possible. I don't know. But anyway. Then we have this boat here where Mina is worried about Jonathan because in London he spots Dracula when he spots him, and he was very pale and his eyes seemed bulging out as, half in terror and half in amazement, he gazed at a tall thin man with a beaky nose and a black moustache and pointed beard who was also observing the pretty girl. So you've got Dracula there, for want of a better word, perving away. Well, I say Dracula perving, he's obviously thinking about a potential victim and maybe a vampire conversion as well. But you've got Jonathan Harker is obviously alarmed by this as well. We can see, again, there's dramatic irony because Mina doesn't know that it's Dracula. We have his big white teeth, that we've got very similar description to how Jonathan Harker described Dracula in his own journal when he was in Transylvania as well. I believe it is the Count, but he has grown young. There's a bit of unfamiliar collocation there where you wouldn't expect words. You grow old, you don't normally grow young. So again, it's another one of these inversions that Stoker uses when describing Dracula. And we have, what was I going to pick out here? So we have a little bit about the qualities of Quincy as a man. If America can go on breeding men like that, she will be a power in the world indeed. So at the time of writing for Stoker, you have America as an emerging power. They're not the most powerful country in the world, because Britain is the most powerful country in the world. British Empire, by extension, is the most powerful entity in the world, and America is really just up and coming. So there was a sense of it. So he's kind of foreshadowing what actually did happen in reality of America becoming a the most powerful country in the world. So the Stoker was very prescient there with his observation. And we have this bizarre bit, I shall just highlight it. It says more about Van Helsing's personality, really, about King Laugh. And he talks about, it sounds like he's swearing and abbreviating it slightly, but he's not. King Laugh. He's talking about when you laugh at things that are maybe inappropriate. But I think it's just to show Van Helsing's unusual perspective on reality and life and how he thinks about life and death. He's not being hard-hearted, but he's just recognising that where you can actually find humour in grim situations. And I suppose that informs Van Helsing's approach to, as a character, of how he deals with evil and darkness. But King Laugh, he come like the sunshine, and he ease off the strain again, and we bear to go on with our labour, what it may be. And I think also Stoker is highlighting Van Helsing as a foil to Dracula, where Van Helsing is open to humour and open to laughter, and that's nothing of Dracula's world at all. I mean, he'd only use laughter for cruelty, I assume. This is weird, isn't it? Even if the burial service was comic. So there's aspects of Lucy's funeral that Van Helsing found funny, but you can have these moments in life when you know you're not meant to laugh, or you know you're in a situation that's very serious and you're very grim and you're not meant to laugh, but you just can't kind of help yourself, and there's humour in there. And I think it humanises Van Helsing and it emphasises how different he is to Dracula as a character as well. Then there's some more context we said earlier on about the blood transfusions and the idea of quite so, but there was a difficulty, friend John. If so, then what about the others? Ho ho! Then this is so sweet maid is a polyandrist, and me with my poor wife dead to me, but alive by church's law, though no wits, all gone. Even I, who am faithful husband to this now no wife, am bigamist. So this is where Van Helsing's seeing a kind of an irony in the fact that he donated this blood to Lucy, and therefore she's a polyandrist, as in having multiple husbands, because of the kind of mythology and folklore around blood, which is partially built on spiritual ideas about blood and religious ideas about blood. It's built on our Christian ideas about blood. It's built on those kind of ideas. So Van Helsing sees the kind of humour in all this, in that they're all kind of connected. You get a little bit of Van Helsing's own backstory, where we find out here that Van Helsing is married, but he's got a wife who is mentally ill in some way. There's maybe the vaguest hint that the madness was maybe connected to the supernatural, maybe connected to the undead, maybe connected to vampires. Possibly, because also Van Helsing lost the son as well. And so there could be a bit of a backstory there, but we don't know any more details really than that. And we have the next significant thing I want to talk about is where we get Stoker shifting to another completely different style of writing. So we go for 25th of September, Westminster Gazette, back to the newspaper style, journalistic writing. This time, I don't think it's actually meant to be meaner again as well in this case, but it's reporting about, this is a kind of context thing where obviously 1890s, you're in the era of where they would have these notorious murderers like Jack the Ripper. And there's also another really interesting, weird case, which is of Spring-Heeled Jack, if you've ever heard that one, which is potentially a semi-supernatural, don't know if he was a murderer or attacker. I think he didn't, maybe potentially was a murderer, but it could apparently leap huge distances and things like that. So these newspaper articles here in Dracula remind me of these real life ones where there'd be an unknown killer and it would be reported in kind of lurid, sensationalist language, which Stoker emulates here. So it's using things like the Kensington Horror, the Stabbing Woman, or the Woman in Black. This is all referring to Lucy as a vampire. We haven't had all the dots joined for us yet, but it's giving us a taste of what's happening here. And so a very astute reader might be making the connection here that this is Lucy as a vampire. We've got enough information to gather that. The little street urchins know her as the Bloofer Lady. The Bloofer Lady. So she'd asked them to come for a walk, and she kind of then hurts, or presumably also must kill children as well. Like some of these children will be homeless as well and haven't got families and things. So this is what's happening here with it. And what Stoker's drawing on here is the sense of horror, the idea of the way that a newspaper would report female criminals, particularly female criminals who prey on children or abuse children or anything like that. It always takes a slightly different angle, as in it's kind of considered, not that normal isn't quite the word that I mean, but I suppose more typical in terms of like males performing those crimes. But when females perform those kind of crimes, they kind of deal with it differently because of the idea of the horror of not just of hurting, abusing, killing children, but also the idea that women are naturally mothers and carers and nurturing. So the idea of a female character doing these things subverts those natural stereotypes and ideas and cultural values surrounding women. So that's happening here with this. But you have the Bloofer Lady, and then the children who've been missing and have been slightly torn or wounded in the throat. So again, it's hinting at vampirism. The wounds seem such as might be made by a rat or a small dog. So you see what I mean? Like it's reflecting these kind of reports about, say, Jack the Ripper or Spring-Heeled Jack, like a different figure, or other murderers of the era. These kind of mysterious, baffling cases, unsolved crimes where things don't really add up. There's another one here, the Hampstead Horror, another child injured. So it's more of these lurid kind of headlines that you get in the Victorian era. And another child's injured. It was terribly weak and looked quite emaciated. So obviously the Stoker's implying through this news article that the child is having its blood drained and lured away by the Bloofer Lady. So that's it for this chapter. So thank you for listening. Listen to all the other ones, like and comment and bells and etc. etc. But yeah, watch out for the Bloofer Lady.